Welcome to the Paperless Productivity Podcast, where we have experts give you the insights, know-how, and resources to help you transform your workplace from paper to digital while making your work life better at the same time.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Steve Gluski, your host, and today we're going to be talking with Ottawa County about the value that they receive using on-base workflow. Several years ago, the National Center for State Courts recognized that there isn't a single CMS in the marketplace that satisfies all the court's needs. And to address this issue, they developed the application component model, which is a standards-driven approach that allows courts to pick and choose best-of-breed pieces of functionality that extends the capability of their CMS. And Ottawa County has done this quite successfully. And here to share their story with me is Kathy Winston, who is the Assistant Director of Ottawa County Friend of the Court, and Amy Debault, the Technology Specialist within the same office. Welcome, Kathy and Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Kathy, it's an honor to have you on today's call. I know that you've got a tremendous amount of experience there working at the county. And also, I wanted to congratulate you again on receiving the Outstanding Supervisor of the Year award from the Family Support Council of Michigan. And that was just, you received that last year, right? 2019?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much. I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Yeah. So, hey, a friend of the court is kind of an unusual phrase, I think, for people outside the state of Michigan. Could you give us an overview of what your office does?
Yes. So we, at Friend of the Court, enforce child support, parenting time, and custody orders. That's our main objective. We here at Ottawa County have 2 circuit court judges who handle the domestic relation cases, and we also have 3 attorney referees who handle our docket of approximately 12,000 cases here in Ottawa County. So the Friend of the Court does that enforcement, and then we have the judges and referees who help process these cases with hearings and so forth.
Okay, great.
So in addition to that, we have the office is divided into 2. We have field services staff and we have support staff to help manage these cases that I mentioned earlier, the 12,000. We have 4 custody investigators who does the custody investigation when a client files a change in custody. We also have 13 investigators who manage an alpha split caseload. And that we have some specific investigators for interstate cases, for medical, for paternity establishment. We have bench warrants, and we have enforcement. So those are all investigators who are assigned based on an alpha split or the specific type of cases that we're dealing with. In addition to that, we have 16 support staff that fall under operations. And so we have a team that manages our front lobby, the reception staff for clients coming into the courthouse, for Friend of the Court to check in for a hearing. And then we also have our order entry team who gets all of the orders from either the judge or the referee and make sure it's entered into our child support system. And I also want to mention that in terms of our child support system, we process these cases through the Michigan Child Support Enforcement System. So if I mention MISAs, that's what I'm referring to, the orders that's entered into that. And that generates the income withholding and all of the other enforcement remedies that we have available to us here in Michigan. And then we have a team of data processing staff who process child support reviews. We are mandated to review cases every 3 years, and so that team handles that portion of it. And then we also have one last team and that would be our order prep team, and they create all the orders, and all of those orders are processed through our on-base system. So that's really a basic overall of our office.
Very good, Kathy. I really appreciate that. Amy, could you give us an overview on your workflow solution?
When we were discussing how to set up our workflow, we basically set it up to mimic, as Kathy mentioned, how our office is divided up. We have our investigative staff and we have support staff, and within the support staff, there's judicial clerks that do this, and there's judicial clerks that do that. We have a data processing department and an account specialist department. So within the support staff, there's 4 or 5 other areas that we've broken it up to. And then also in our investigator staff, we have 9 investigators that handle just specific alpha split. And then we have the others that are specialized, which is such as custody workers and bench warrant workers. So when we created it, we basically wanted to mimic how we have the office set up. So we created several different life cycles to manage that for us. And everything is basically routed around the office based on the father's last name, the first letter of his last name. So we have about 14 different life cycles, and within those life cycles, we have individual work queues that hold all of our documents after they're imported into OnBase and indexed.
Okay, great. So you got rid of the physical case file, and you're just routing around documents as they come in using different rules.
Correct.
Okay, Kathy, Ottawa County, they consistently perform at a very high level when you look at state and federal standards. With that in mind, in what ways has OnBase workflow helped you achieve this?
So with OnBase, as Amy mentioned about the life cycle and the queues that's set up, I mean, she identified that where we have life cycles for each process, basically we have, and based on how our office is split up. And so like for our paternity establishment, they have their own. And so, for federal incentives, we got to work those cases within a certain amount of time. And so by processing them through OnBase, we're able to meet that incentive because we're able to process the case quicker than we would if we were doing it by paper. And also, like we have the support, the child support enforcement collections, even that, we have an internal process where if someone comes in our office and make a payment, we have internally through OnBase a special instruction where they can identify where the payment should be allocated to, and we make sure some get allocated to arrears, so then that helps in that area. And so they use that template that's within the OnBase system to workflow it, so it goes to our data processing staff who make sure that money is applied appropriately. So as Amy said, we basically took our processes and moved them into OnBase, and that just requires us to be able to operate more efficiently.
Okay, very good. So you institutionalized that process knowledge, and then you automated the repetitive steps, and that's helping you to meet these standards in order to get reimbursed for your incentives, correct?
Yes, and when you talk about the institutionalization, we have those templates in place, and that creates the repetition. So then our judicial staff or that team that I have, with order prep, they can easily go and create an order based on the order type, make changes as necessary, process it quickly, and then it workflows to the next person who needs to sign it, ultimately getting to the judge until we have a final order, and then comes back to our judicial clerks to e-file with circuit court records. So it's just, and it happens pretty much within a day. If they create the order today, it goes out, and then once it's signed by the judge, it's e-filed with circuit court records that gets e-notice to the parties and respective attorneys. So it's just a quicker process versus having to do extensive mailing like we've done prior to this process.
Okay, excellent, Kathy. So you mentioned the day turnaround, and that's a good kind of metric. Do you have any kind of other metrics as far as how it's improved productivity for the court based on like how long would it take to turn that order around when on-base or when Ottawa County was paper-based?
So at the time when we were looking into on-base solution, there was a time study conducted among all of front of the court staff where they had to identify step by step of the work they were doing. If they went and grabbed a file, how long it took, was the file out with signed out to someone else or another department, how long did you have to wait to retrieve the file to be able to process whatever you had in front of you. And so at that time, it really transitioned the time down to zero once we went into on-base, because with on-base, multiple people can access the same file at the same time. So you're not walking around or scrambling trying to figure out who has the file to process it. And sometimes you may have had someone in front of you, or now if I have someone in front of me, and that's the same with the referees on the bench. They can access all of the documents, whether they're filed with circuit court record or in the front of the court file, and it has reduced the time down to zero.
Great. So that transition time between steps goes right down to zero, and you're able to reap up.
And another part, too, I want to mention is that, prior to COVID, we had a alternate work location where we had the ability to work from home. And so we use a duo that gives us the second layer of security for any solutions we access from home. And so the good part about on-base is we're able to access on-base and still conduct our work effectively, having on-base off-site as well.
So that's really helped out tremendously, I imagine, in this COVID era where you're doing all your Zoom meetings and not holding face-to-face meetings. Is that correct?
That is correct. Or we have investigator staff who are working from home and they're processing work and they need to access the files to see what was sent the last time. So it goes both ways, yes. So it really has helped for hearings and for just looking for information in the FOC file, or if you get a call regarding a parenting time, to look up a parenting time order to see if there's some validity to a complaint. But they can do that all from home.
Okay. So it really enables that remote workforce of yours. So terrific. Hey, Amy, I know that we've talked a lot about workflow and how it's being used in the office. Are there any processes you want to highlight, whether they're, intra or inter? Because I know that your other courts for other case types, they all use workflow as well. And so any particular processes that you want to highlight as far as you're receiving a lot of value from?
We like the fact that we've created ways for documents to easily be transferred or routed from one worker to another. So they may also look at it, or if one worker receives the document, they can put a note on it using sticky note or overlap text. They can put a note on it and manually route it to another person in another department within the front of the court. So that has proved very nice, because otherwise you're putting a sticky note on a piece of paper and putting it in a box and hoping that the sticky note stays attached to it. So that was a big thing. And we've also created a way for our clients to submit their issue or question via the internet. We have a link on our website where they can submit a question They just fill in their case number and their name and address and email address, and then they can type out what they are questioning. There's not a way for them to attach a document to it, but they can type anything they need, and then when they hit submit, it comes into our on-base solution, and it immediately routes to a caseworker's box. So it's a big customer service aspect that we've been able to create for our clients.
Okay, great. How about with different offices? Your workflow integrates with the clerk and the court, right, for order creation and processing. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. So after our investigators have participated in a hearing, or if they need to create a motion for a hearing, we have templates made up that they fill out, and it routes to a staff worker, and they are able to create the motion or order from within OnBase. We have several different templates that they can fill in the blanks that need to be filled in, and it can be then routed to the referee or the judge to affix their signatures, and then it can route back to our office where we can print and mail it if we have to, and affix any other signatures we may have to affix for a certificate of mailing, and then they can just be routed up to circuit court records to be filed with the court. And at the same time, if it's an order, at the same time it goes up to records, it goes to our order entry department, to our account specialist, where they can enter that order into the child support system. So an order could be turned around within a day or two of the client being in front of the judge for a court hearing or in front of the referee.
Wow. Okay, that's fantastic. Kathy, I know that recently, I think it was, for about 8 months or so, you went mandatory e-filing for your case types.
That's correct.
And that must have just, again, kind of amplified all the productivity that you're realizing with the solution, because now you don't have to handle those incoming documents.
Exactly. That is correct. And so even with getting our notices for hearings, and then sending the e-notices for completed orders that's signed by the judge or the referee, it really works out really nice. It's just a matter of clicking the button. And so there was a, what you want to call it, intro period, and we still are not there where we have all of the cases, all of the parties, I should say, signed up for my file, but the majority of them over time have signed in because it's mandatory, so it's nice. So there are a few notices or orders that we have to physically mail, but not at the same volume that we did before the mandatory e-filing.
So in many respects, you've kind of, when you do have the email address and that through e-filing, and that it's really kind of automated a lot of the communication you have with your constituents.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we're looking to expand that more broadly with some electronic signatures for the external constituents. So we are working on other avenues to further utilize OnBase.
Okay, great. So, Kathy, how has OnBase workflow helped your office to kind of achieve those state and federal statutes?
So it's helped because all of our processes are within OnBase, and so it eliminated. So like I explained before, someone comes in to make a payment. My frontline staff generates a template in there. Now, mind you, the templates are, this is like a worksheet, so to speak, and it identifies different debt types where we can allocate money. And so they know they have to put $1 in arrears to count. So if they're paying current support and they're making a $200 payment, they pay the $1.99 to the current support and $1 to arrears for a total of $2. But they have to give us permission, and most often or always they give us permission to do that. But we have to put at least $1 in there. So that helps with that arrears case collection, which is one of our federal incentives. And so that helps us get to that 80% or close to the 80% that's required to make sure we maximize that based on our performance. So that's just one of many processes we have within OnBase that really has helped us achieve the high standard.
Okay, excellent. And how about just in general as a tool to administrate the office? How any particular areas there that you want to focus on?
To administer the office in
Yep.
terms of managing the staff, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. It really holds staff accountable. So as a supervisor, Amy was instrumental in setting all of the life cycle and work cues for staff based on how our office is divided. So myself, I have access to all of the cues. So for me as a supervisor, I can go and see what my account clerks are doing. I can see what my data processing specialists are doing. I can see what investigators are doing. If I receive a complaint, I can see where that complaint is at. Like, for instance, if I get a call to say, John Doe, investigator, has not returned my call, I can look up the case number and see, like if they're talking about a specific document, and to see if that was processed. They submitted something 2 days ago or what have you. But I could easily look at that. So it helps you locate documents a lot better if that's it, because you can look up the docket number and then see where the document is at in the life cycles, is what I'm saying. So then it can help you provide customer service to the client. Also, with notices of hearings, also prior to us going to OnBase, clients and attorneys would call and say, hey, I submitted a request for a hearing. You can look into OnBase and see where it's at in the process, because if it goes from step 1 to step 2, step 3, you can watch the cues in OnBase to see where that document is moving to in the next step, where it's going. So that helps. So it lessens the phone calls. And even if you do get a phone call, you can get an answer pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's basically consolidated all of our processes in here, which makes it a lot more manageable without pushing all of the paper.
So it makes it very visual, right? You can look in there and you can identify particular bottlenecks and then provide assistance to help bring it under control.
Absolutely. So from time to time, I also look at my teams to see if the work is being distributed equally, because, sometimes, as Amy described, we have an alpha split. So operation or support staff teams also have an alpha split. So you want to make sure that the workflow is equally, because you don't know if JK and L is heavier than A, B, C, in terms of by the non-custodial parent's last name. That's how the alpha split goes. So OnBase helps us evaluate that quickly.
And the overall, I think, transparency, right? You're working remotely. You can see things visually. Do you use the audit tracking, the history features of OnBase much? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the past, especially when you get high-profile cases, or if you have employees who have cases within Ottawa County, it used to be problematic, and so they would not enter the case into the case management system in fear of other staff being just gossipy or nosy about a coworker's filing, or whatever the case may be. It could be a divorce, it could be a parenting time issue. And so they would hold out the file, the complete file out, and so you had to go to circuit court records and check it out. Well, now it gets scanned just like everything else, and supervisors monitor that file and manages that file because it's assigned to a supervisor, and we are able to look at the history. Every document has a history, and so you can tell if a coworker looked at a specific document, and it's very easy to locate. And so it provides some accountability to staff to know that and not be nosy and gossipy. If it's not related to your work, you should not be accessing that case to look at any document. And so that's made very clear from the management.
Oh, thank you, Kathy, for
that,
touching upon that. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
If I can just add on to that, we've had time to time we'll get a complaint from a client that states that so and so is, looking at my file. They're telling my friends things about my case. Well, when that complaint comes in, we can look at the history and we can prove that our employee has not looked at that file. We can see everyone who's looked at it. So that also helps on the customer service aspect that, the clients can trust us. We're not looking at things we shouldn't be looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great point there, Amy. It establishes that trust because you got that. It protects the office from a liability standpoint, and you've got that level of transparency. Hey, Amy, are there other ways? I know that child support cases are very sensitive. Are there other ways that your solution has helped improve security?
Well, we have a specific document type created for confidential documents. So any documents with social security numbers or tax information on them, they're indexed with a confidential code and a confidential document type. So if we have a small workflow set up, because our clients can request to review their file. So if they were to come in and review their file, we have a workflow set up that we can take all the documents in their file and put them in a specific little life cycle of their own. But when we move them, it doesn't move anything with a confidential document type. So those are automatically weeded out. We don't have to do anything to it. And if there are other documents that are not confidential that have like maybe an address on them and there's a personal protection order, we can redact an address. So the person coming in to view the file cannot see the addresses. We can redact all of those things out, make them a public viewing document, and there's no, we don't have to worry about anything getting out that would put someone in danger. And we've created a way where they can print the document, and it works just like a little checkout system. They click on the print task, and it tells them it's going to cost them $1, and it goes into a little shopping cart, and one of our clerks will print the documents and collect the money from the client, and they can get a copy of the documents.
Okay, sounds good. And there's also the ability, like if you have one of your staff members that's related to a particular case, you can block them out through the security system of OnBase.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I had that written down to make sure I mentioned that. As an OnBase administrator, I can go in and block people from seeing the front of the court file. I can block them from seeing the circuit court record file if there is the need. If they have a client or if they're a friend, they don't want to be able to see anything. If they're their neighbor, it's a protection for them and it's a protection for us. So as an administrator, I can go in and block them out.
Okay, very good. So, the security controls then are very granular. Hey, Amy, another question. I know from time to time you need to, processes change, and then how easy is it for you to make changes to your routing rules or the way your system behaves?
Well, as I also have a workflow administrator training, So IT has given access to the on-base studio. So I can go into Studio and I can troubleshoot any problems, or if a document is not routing correctly, I can go in and correct that. And when something changes within the office and we don't want these documents going to this department anymore, we want them going to this department, I can easily go in and adjust that workflow without having to wait for our IT on-base administrator to do it for us. So I've freed up a lot of their time to work with other offices within the county that have on-base.
Understand. So you're a sub-administrator. You've offloaded a lot of that work, and on-base has got an easy point-and-click interface where it's easy for you to make changes?
Yes, Studio is very nice.
Can I give you an example of one of the recent tasks Amy had? So our judges receive ex parte orders regarding an emergency change in custody or parenting time, and it comes over to our custody team to give the judge a quick summary of the case. And then the summary is like a supporting document. So you have in records this ex parte file, and then that actually comes over to FOC to create a summary that goes to the judge to review it. The judge, all he has to do is access his ex parte queue, and if he double-click on that case, it would give him the supporting documents to look at before he decides if he wants to sign that order or not. And so Amy created the rules behind the scenes to make sure that in that life cycle or that queue, he can double click it to look at supporting documents, which is coming from FOC, which is like a recommendation based on any activity that's been on the case, to the judge, and then that helps him make a decision if he's going to grant the ex parte order or not.
Oh, nice enhancement there, Amy.
Yeah, prior to that, we printed our summary out. We went in, we waited for the judge to be available, and then we discussed it with the judge, and then he signed it. We've basically cut out that entire step.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, terrific. Well, I tell you, I think, thank you so much for your time today, Kathy and Amy, for being on the call. It's been a wonderful discussion. I'm so impressed with all the work that you've done. Let's see, for our listeners, we appreciate you downloading this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about ImageSoft, please visit imagesoftinc.com. And then also be sure to see the show notes regarding a link to NCSC for the application component model. So this concludes this podcast. Thank you and have a great day.
Thanks again for joining us on this podcast. To learn more about ImageSoft, please visit imagesoftinc.com. That's imagesoftinc.com. If you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe to Paperless Productivity, where we tackle some of the biggest paper-based pain points facing organizations today. We'll see you next time.